I'm writing a paper on global warming for a class in biology. The first thing I would do to gather information about global warming is to go to a search engine like Google and type in scholarly analysis on global warming. And then there are some websites, and I would look through them and pick out a reliable source. And I'm going to choose the livescience.com source for key arguments for global warming. And then I would read through the article and decide whether or not it's a scholarly source or if it's just someone who made up stuff. I would use this source because it has quotes from other scientists, like a research team by Roy Spencer from the University of Alabama, 1992, that was a critic of global warming, and he has a quote here by him. And it says that the research team then published a paper and did an analysis. So I would likely use some of this information. But the first half of the article seems to be more narrative and not actually factually based, so I probably wouldn't use much of this one. And then I'd go back to my search engine and search something like global warming effects on society. And there's an article from the EPA.gov, which is a reliable source because it's a government website. And I would read through it and find some points where I would be able to make an argument based off of what they say, cite some of the factual content they present, and then give my own analysis on what I think about their facts. And then they have references at the bottom of the page, so I can click on their references and look at what these articles say about global warming. And there's some analysis on how city residents and urban infrastructure have distinct sensitivities to climate change impacts. So I could reword that and make it my own thought, and then use their examples and cite sources and give my analysis on what I think about the examples of heat waves being amplified in cities cause cities to absorb more heat during the day than rural areas. So cities are more densely populated. And after I've found all of the information I need to use from this article, I can go back and look for some more articles that would help me. And I keep up with all the websites that I use by copying the URL at the top and saving it in a Word document or a separate Word document from my paper, so I can make sure I keep going back and looking. And then I'd likely search the global warming effects on animals for my biology class, or specifically reptiles, or a common one, polar bears. So I search the global warming effects on reptiles, and I come up with another government article about reptiles and climate change, which would likely be a reliable article to use. It's from the United States Department of Agriculture, so it's a reliable source. It could have some bias in it if the government doesn't actually believe in global warming or not, but you can exploit their bias if you want to, or required to. It says a lot of the global warming stuff is more opinionated than factual. So it says in temperate zones, lizards are thought to be highly vulnerable to climate change. It doesn't say they are, it just says thought to be. So you could use that to your advantage or not. The first sentence of the article says, many reptiles are highly sensitive to the altered temperatures that may result from climate change due to their ectothermy, which requires that they rely on ambient environmental temperatures to maintain critical physiological processes. So you could use that quote and use bits and pieces of it and figure out what the physiological processes that they're referring to are, and then use that in your essay. And then if I thought I had enough information, I would likely look for some documents about against global warming and why, or in the science that they have for why global warming is not real. So I'd probably search some something like global warming global warming hoax or something like that. There's just a lot of blogs on some hoaxes about global warming and people who don't believe it. So it seems like most scholarly sources, or primary sources that you would use, believe global warming is real and not a hoax. Most everyone who thinks it's a hoax is just someone writing a blog on here. So you could use that and say that there's not a lot of facts about global warming not existing. And say the only people who believe global warming does not exist are those that are not scholarly sources, because cannot find a scholarly source with actual research that suggests that global warming is not an issue. There's one article it's a column from an author named John Hawkins on a website named townhall.com, which explains 5 reasons why global warming is not real. And it explains that there hasn't been any global warming since 1997, saying that the temperature of the planet has essentially been flat for 17 years. And I don't know where he got that from. It seems almost made up, but he says that the director of Climate Research Unit of the University of East Anglia admits that it's true. And since I don't know what the University of East Anglia is, he could be reaching for a fact in order to back up his argument. And almost all of his sources are articles along the same lines of his own that say many of the same things his does. So this is not a very good source to use unless you're arguing that global warming does in fact exist, and that people who don't think it exists don't have any facts to back up their side of the argument, which seems to be true. So I would likely use the first 3 sources I found in the government documents to support my argument that says that global warming is true and it's affecting reptiles and animals and climate change, and that those who think global warming is not true don't have actual factual information to prove why. So then I would likely move into writing the essay.